Good evening, afternoon, night, morning, whenever you find a way to watch this podcast. It is me, Omar Ashanti, Borja, the Burger Popper, and joining me is an old friend of the podcast. And for the first time in a couple of years, we took a couple of years off in doing this. We're going to try to project the Sun Belt's bowl destinations. And looking back, I'm kind of glad I didn't do it in 2023 because we would have been on here for like 2 hours talking about all 12 bowl teams. This year, it's a bit fewer bowl teams. We have 9 teams to talk about, but I just love talking bowl games. And as I prefaced on another podcast that I'm probably going to release at the time that this is released, talking about Delaware's bowl destination with Joe Flacco burner. There's just going to be a very torrid pace of just bowl projection content in the next few days. So just buckle up and enjoy it because it's my favorite time of the college football year. But enough talking from me for now. Joining me, of course, is old friend Thomas Gleaton from the Trojan Wall and, of course, the Sun Belt Mafia group chat. So, Thomas, how's everything going?
It's fantastic, and I got to agree with you. This is the best time of year. This is the best, I don't know if it's the best week of the year. Maybe it is just because, my alma mater's in the conference championship, but just waiting to see where these teams are going to go and all these seniors that get an opportunity after winning half their games, they get an opportunity to play one more game and just have fun and just go do something. First of all, I'd like to say I'm honored that I am in the same echelon as Joe Flacco burner right now, to be included among that legendary status there. But no, I'm with you. Just it is so much more of a game. It is so much crazier, and I think across the board, not just in the Sun Belt, because we have fewer teams now in the Sun Belt getting into a bowl game, but across the board, just trying to pin down where teams are going. It's so crazy and so hectic. It's Sunday is going to be insane. Just me going, what? Why are they going there? Kind of thing. So, but no, I'm so happy to be here. I'm so excited to get into this.
Yeah, me too. I mean, that's the hardest thing too, is like I can make projections all day, but actually like talking to people who are like in touch with these conferences and everything is just exciting, which like in the coming week is part of the tour pace. Be talking about the max bowl projections as well, because they're in the same boat as the Sun Belt where they're at the whims of ESPN for most of their bowl games, so it's just exciting. Like I just love it.
And I love the MAC too, because they have 5 or 6 teams that are eligible, and they all have the same basic record. They're 7-5, 8-4, and that's it. Like they're all there in that window. Even the conference champion 7-5, and you have an 8-4 team that's not in the championship. And on top of that, I want to bring this up just because you brought up the MAC, but it feels like the only thing that I know for certain is that Northwestern is going to play a MAC school in the Detroit Bowl. That is where we're at. That is the only thing that I am certain of. And even that, I'm not betting on it. Like all of the craziness that just across the board. But no, it's nice to have a plethora of teams just to kind of look at and to see from top down. The Sun Belt has, James Madison at 11-1, but then they've got 6 teams at 6-6. You've got Louisiana, Coastal, Georgia Southern. So it's more of a crapshoot just because of the expanse, but that kind of makes it a little easier to decide where these teams are going to go.
Yeah, I would agree. And I mean, I guess the point on the chaos is for the Detroit Bowl, I don't have Northwestern playing in that one just because Penn State is really the kind of chaos in the middle. So you can ask so many people who's going where.
That's just how all over the place this is.
Yeah, so I mean, I'm just excited to get started, and I think you'll be interested too in where I have Troy going. This might cause some ire or some anger, but we'll get to that soon.
Absolutely. And to bring it up, Brett McMurphy, I don't know if his name is one of those Voldemort type things where you bring him up or not, but his most recent projections have Troy in New Mexico. So trust me, I don't think you're going to bring too much ire from me. You'll be all right.
That's a good matchup though. I actually like that. That's a good matchup.
With New Mexico specifically, yes.
Yeah.
But at the top of the conference, though, I think the thing that everybody's looking at, it's pretty obvious, is James Madison being 11-1, coming in this conference championship game. They got a lot of – the spread is – as a Troy alum, as the guy who runs the Trojan Wall, I'm aware that the spread is 23.5 and growing. So everybody's looking at that as James Madison going to, kick some butt on Friday, very likely. What are the chances they get into the college football playoff? I think that's the big question that everybody has for the conference this year. And I'd love to hear your side of things, just because I know I have a very, like, it's very clear that Duke has a lot of hand in this. It's not James Madison driving the car, but there's a chance. It's like sitting there as a Sun Belt person. There's a chance that a Sun Belt team gets into the playoff.
Yeah, I think that's a great place to start. I mean, we talked before how we're going to go from the top down. So for James Madison, so with that discussion, I think it's tough because, in my opinion, the way that the team should have been ranked for the college football playoff rankings is, I think it should have been North Texas, James Madison, and then, well, I don't even think Tulane should be ranked. That's probably a hot take. I know they have 2 Power 4 wins, but I don't know. It's hard to overlook a bad loss, really. So with that being said, I think a more realistic scenario would have been, or should have been, a better scenario should have been, if North Texas wins, they're in the playoff. If they lose, JMU's in the playoff, where Tulane's not really in the equation at all. But thankfully, Duke, thanks to the ACC's tiebreakers, has given JMU new life. And so that's the path that I've chosen to choose in my projections, where I'm actually projecting James Madison to make the playoff. I know before we talked, before we went live, you didn't really have as much faith in Duke, but I kind of feel something funny there with Duke, honestly, just because Virginia plays down to competition.
I am absolutely pulling for Duke 100%. Apart from the conference championship that happens on Friday and the ties I have with my alma mater, I'm a Sun Belt Conference person too. I'm absolutely pulling for Duke and the chaos that would ensue if Virginia loses in that conference championship game. And I agree with you. I don't know if I would. I think Tulane not being ranked, that is a pretty bold take. I'll give you that.
Okay.
But I like what you have. I agree with you, because it's very clear that the college football, those last rankings telegraph exactly what the committee's thinking as far as these conference championship games, with regard to, for sure, that last 5th conference championship spot in the playoff. It's very clear that they're saying that this is who we think is going to, if they win out, they're going to be in it. And this is kind of something else there as well. But I agree with you. I think James Madison should have been between North Texas and Tulane, just to kind of give more of an idea that, yeah, there's a lot more happening here behind the scenes than you could. But to that point, it just makes it more obvious as to what would happen, what has to happen for that to get to that point. But no, 100%. Whenever the Blue Devils take the field, if it's not the same time as Troy, I'm going to be cheering just as hard for them. So I don't know if I like you said, I don't know if James Madison gets in, just because they could probably beat Troy 50-0. Knock on wood, hope that doesn't happen. But I don't think that there's going to be enough for them to overcome Virginia. A Virginia win, putting them into the playoff. And I love it. I'm here for the chaos. I just got to be realistic about it. And I don't know even if JMU did make it into the playoffs, personally, I don't know how much that would actually impact the Bulls down the line. And I think that might be my hot take, is that you have these tie-ins. We'll get to it, but Old Dominion's the only other one that even looks on paper. Look at FPI. Look at the overall record. Old Dominion's the only other one that looks like even decent on paper. And in years past, we've had 3 or 4 9 or 10 win teams that like just look good from the conference. It's a down year for the conference. Pretty obvious. We're dealing, like I said, a ton of 6-6 teams. So I don't have James Madison going necessarily. But even if they did, I don't really think it impacts the rest of the picks too much.
Okay. Yeah, that's interesting. I would agree, just because it's not exactly a conference thing like we talked before we went live. It's an ESPN thing for most of the group of 5 sides. So like they'll find a way to shift someone else in. And like the way I think about it is, like if Duke doesn't make the playoff, then that pushes an ACC team into just another ESPN bowl, really. So I definitely agree with that. But where would you have JMU bowling then if they didn't make the playoff?
And that's the $1 million question, or I suppose $400,000 question, depending on what the games are. The only thing that I know for sure, and again, that's few and far between at this point, is that James Madison is going to play a Power 5 team. That's kind of been the obvious cycle these past few years. Is Troy broke the mold with John Summerall and playing Duke in the Birmingham Bowl. Louisiana the next year played TCU last year. After losing the conference championship, they still played TCU in a bowl game. So it's very clear that the 10-win teams, if you win 10 games in the Sun Belt, at this point, you're starting to get to the point where, okay, we're going to put you up against a weaker, maybe a 7-5 or an 8-4, but you get, for winning 10 games in the conference, you get to go play a Power 5 team in a bowl game. And I think that's what JMU is going to get. I think James Madison probably, honestly, it would be hilarious. And I think the committee would thumb their nose at everybody and do this on purpose. They would probably put JMU and Duke in the Birmingham Bowl. I don't think that's necessarily the case. I think JMU could end up in the Birmingham Bowl. I think that's the best option just because it's most likely. But to see them play Duke, James Madison and Duke play in the Birmingham Bowl would be really funny. I've gone through projections several times as to see where they could go. They could play Pitt in the Fenway Bowl. They could play. Let me pull up my other list here. I know that they're going to be playing a Power 5 team. That's something I can get behind. But I think that was it. It was Duke in the Birmingham Bowl. But I don't know what it is specifically, just because of the nebulousness of how it operates now. And I'm sure we'll get into it, but just the way that at this point, there are no set boundaries on this is where your team goes for a bowl game. It's an old thing. It's the Rose Bowl saying we're going to pull these two teams just because that's the matchup we like. And so those teams with the bowls that have that kind of history and money behind them are going to make that choice. And so that kind of, was the standard. But with ESPN owning all the bowls now, I think the only two bowl games that the Sun Belt has ties to that aren't ESPN owned are the 68 Ventures and New Orleans Bowl. But the rest are owned by ESPN. So ESPN only cares about ratings. They're only going to care about a good matchup, which is fine, which is fair. But it hurts sometimes if you do send a team like Troy to New Mexico. What are the odds that that team is actually going to travel all the way across the country on 2 weeks' notice around Christmas time? I don't know what that's going to look like. I don't know how that's going to play out, but just the nebulousness of it. The point is that JMU is going to play a Power 5 team. They're going to get that upgrade, so to speak, and it will probably be a little bit later in the window of the bowl games. I think it probably will be closer to New Year's Eve than the rest of the bowl games, just because they're 11-1 and they might be 12-1 by Saturday. They're going to get the opportunity to play somebody big name, big brand, just to be on TV. They could be in the Mayo Bowl, the Duke's Mayo Bowl, for all we know. Gasparilla, anyway, that's my pick. Is JMU is just I know it's kind of backing out of it, but they're going to be playing a Power 5 team just so that the Sun Belt can say, hey, this is our best. Go play against somebody of a big name, and everybody will want to watch.
Yeah, so I'm 50-50 on that, to be honest with you. So for my projections in the past, I actually had James Madison playing Boise State, not as an insult to James Madison, but just for that TV ratings aspect. Because if you're ESPN, if you're ESPN events, you're thinking about the casual fan that's going to sit down on a Monday afternoon, I think, the 22nd is a Monday afternoon, to watch a Potato Bowl, and you're going to see James Madison and Boise State. You're going to think, oh, James Madison is the new Boise State, because this is a 12-1 team, and then they're going to play actual Boise State. So that's the thinking that I had, and that's no discredit to the Sun Belt itself. The Birmingham and the Gasparilla Bowl are very realistic, I think, too, honestly. And I wouldn't be surprised to see James Madison land in either against an ACC school. But that's just what I had if James Madison didn't make the playoff, just because of that whole Boise State kind of Cinderella thing, and it's Boise State in an off year as well, where Boise State's not going to be really vying for any of the the Texas bowl games that ESPN owns, because they're 8-4 right now, potentially 8-5 maybe, with a loss in the conference championship. So that's where I had them. I would definitely prefer James Madison to play a Power 4 team, but I could see ESPN also doing that.
I could see that. I could also see them playing somebody like, I think UNLV. they're going to be really highly ranked if they win the conference championship. I could see them playing a big name American conference team like Navy or South Florida. I don't see them playing Tulane. I think Tulane with John Sumrall is much of a storyline as it is. I think he's going to get another Power 5 team to play in a bowl game. But I like what you're thinking with giving them a high tier, so to speak, a big name as far as the group of 5 is concerned. And I like Boise just for that because I think they're going to get that. Boise's only like 8-4 or 7-5. It's not a great record. You're right. It's a down year for them. But I like that of putting them with. That is definitely going to get people's attention. If they're flipping on the guide, you just finished the Christmas ham and you're sitting there on the couch looking for something to watch and you put the game on and you see ESPN2, James Madison, Boise State, the casual college football fan is probably going to be like, oh, that looks like fun. So that's a great point. I like that.
Yeah, so I mean, like, it doesn't always have to be fair with these matchups. Like, it doesn't have to be like what they deserve. It's what ESPN thinks will make great cinema. Like you said with Troy, New Mexico. Like,
absolutely.
So yeah.
Now with Troy, and again, I have to take my bias out of it just because I do love my team and I would love to see my alma mater do really well and get and do something well. I think that the Troy being in the conference championship game, that's kind of a level of respect. You get level of respect by not only winning as many games as you can, but being in the conference championship puts you at that level. Realistically, if you sit it down and look at records and FPI, Troy's the number 3 team in the conference. Honestly, they're 8-4. They're going to the conference championship, but they're not on paper as good as Old Dominion. We'll get to Old Dominion in a second, but I think Troy earned a quote unquote upgrade, so to speak, by getting to the conference championship. I would say the same thing about Southern Miss if Southern Miss had won last week. And I'm going to say the same thing about them too, because they're the clear number 4, being 7-5 in the conference. But I think what happens is, and I call them an upgrade just because you've got these tie-ins that are set in stone. And like I said, it's kind of got this old tradition of being the conference goes to a certain bowl game and made easier predictions. But I think that some of these bowl games that the Sun Belt is tied to, they're going to want to put their better teams against other better teams. So I feel like Troy's going to get an upgrade too. And right now, I don't think Boca Raton is out of the question right now. I think I got a ton of reasoning for that, but Boca Raton is one of those upgrade bowls that kind of has an anybody pull from the pool vibe to it. But it's an opportunity for Troy to play against another 8-4, 7-5, 9-3 group of 5 team. It wouldn't surprise me if they went to New Orleans because New Orleans loves Troy, but we'll get to that later. I think there are other teams that just kind of make sense as far as like filling those. We got to fill these roles. We got to put a team there. And I think Troy, I'm picking Boca Raton. Because it's in Florida, it's relatively close. Troy is geographically close to Georgia and Florida. So it kind of makes sense. I think they would travel well. But again, to your point, it's not about the travel anymore. It's about the ratings. I still think that with the teams that are pulled for the Boca Raton Bowl, and I'm buying time so that I can quickly look up. Seriously. The Bush's Boca Raton Bowl of Beans literally pulls anybody from the group of 5. So I think Troy's going to get a decent matchup there. And it might be, like you say, it might be somebody like Kennesaw State or somebody where it's like, oh, they were pretty good this year and get them to flip over. But Boca Raton is where I'm going with them. And now I'm opening the gates to let you hurt me with your pick where you think that Troy's going this year. And I'm perfectly fine. Do your worst.
Yeah, I don't know if you're prepared for this, honestly.
I'm
but
not.
I actually have
not.
Troy Jacksonville State in the Salute to Veterans Bowl.
Really?
ESPN, I mean, in Alabama. And I just think that with that quick of a turnaround with both teams playing their conference championship game on, it would be December 5th, an 11-day turnaround, not too much travel for an in-state game. These are 2 in-state rivals, I mean, naturally, I think the casual fan will see that both teams are in the state of Alabama after doing just a brief moment of research. And they'll see that both these teams were conference runner-ups because I do have Kennesaw State winning Conference USA just for fun, honestly, just because I want chaos in that, and I want to see them in Shreveport against the Big 12 team. So yeah, that's where I had Troy. But the Boca Raton Bowl does make sense. But the only thing that I have about that is because I have FIU playing in the Boca Raton Bowl, because it makes sense geographically, that would require a downgrade in a Sun Belt opponent, which we'll get to. But
Sure.
yeah, so I have Troy going to the Salute to Veterans because they also haven't played in that bowl game. I think has it been 8 years or ever?
In which one?
In the Salute to Veterans Bowl.
So that I'm glad you brought that up. So this gives me a segue. There's several schools of thought going on here as a response. And first of all, Troy's never played in what used to be the Community Bowl, now is the Salute to Veterans Bowl. But it allows me to open up the door to drop one of my favorite little nuggets of information. Johnny Williams, the late Johnny Williams, rest in peace, was a Troy athletic director, and he basically started the Salute to Veterans Community Bowl back in the mid 2000s after that 2013 season where the Sun Belt had so many bowl eligible teams and none of them made it. He had left Troy. He, I think, was maybe working at Alabama or something, but he helped start that bowl just as an option. So if Troy was like 6-6 and needed somewhere to go, they could go to that bowl game. It's kind of the same idea as Mobile having the 68 Ventures Bowl for South, the Myrtle Beach Bowl for Coastal, New Mexico Bowl, the Potato Bowl, this, that, and the other. But yeah, I'm glad you mentioned the turnaround, because my school of thought is I don't think a conference contender is going to be picked for a bowl game until the 19th or 20th, a good 2 weeks. I tend to give myself 2 weeks before that they're picked for a bowl game. So I like the matchup. Let me be clear on that. It brings back an old rivalry. It's a popular pick, and I think I think you're right about it. I just don't think it happens in Montgomery. So I like the pick. I don't think it happens in Montgomery for the reasons that you brought up. But the Troy-Jacksonville State rivalry, I have a sneaking feeling that if that happened, if that pulled down, we might see an antique pulled out of the. There's a chance we see the antique pulled out of storage for that one, but no, I like Jacksonville State as a matchup pick because you're right. They're both conference contenders, and they're both in the state of Alabama. So that rivalry is going to be a very elusive, not elusive, alluring is the word I'm looking for, a very alluring pick for any bowl team. I think a lot of people have that matchup happening in New Orleans instead of Montgomery, but still, I like the pick of teams. But you know, it would be hilarious to see the two of them play in Montgomery at any level at any point in the future, regardless.
Yeah, and so I would think like New Orleans, that was actually like my second like pick for that matchup, but just because Jacksonville State played there in 2023, where that kind of just dissuaded me from that. So it would make sense though, because Troy hasn't been there. So maybe Troy hasn't been not being there since 2017 kind of outweighs the fact that Jacksonville State was there 2 years ago, but maybe just them playing Troy itself would, cause a lot of fans to make a second trip to New Orleans, which actually too, I think the attendance for that New Orleans Bowl in 2023 was like in the 10,000s. Like it wasn't even that good anyway. So not many Jacksonville State fans went in the first place. So
yeah, and I mean, to their point, they're relatively new into the FBS territory. So that's going to be a ding against them. But I do know on the other side, New Orleans loved the attendance from Troy, and like I mentioned, they're not an ESPN bowl, so they don't necessarily are as concerned about ratings. Even though, I mean, at this point, the decisions are made based on matchups like that. That's a great point that you brought up there as well. As far as the as most recent appearances is concerned, I think you're right. Bowls are going to try to avoid recent attendees where they can. Definitely going to avoid previous years, but I like that you mentioned that Jacksonville State was there 2 years ago and beat Louisiana in overtime. Wasn't that a field goal that made the difference in that game, or a missed field goal? Yeah. So no, that's a great point, and I like that. New Orleans. Do we want to stay on New Orleans?
Yeah, I think that's good. Yeah,
because it is a tie-in. It is a tie-in for It is a good tie-in for. It is a definitive tie-in for the conference, and I'm going to go against your point simply because it was 2 years ago. I've got Louisiana going there just because they travel really well. And I know it was 2 years ago, not last year. So that's why I don't think Georgia Southern is going to go there. But the way that everything else played out, looking at it from a perspective of let's use the 6-6 teams that may be less desirable to just fill what we've got to fill as far as the tie-ins that we're guaranteed there. That's kind of what I'm thinking there too, because I've also thought Southern Miss would be a good fit for the New Orleans Bowl as well. I think any of those 3 teams, those top 3 teams in the West, are good ideas for the New Orleans Bowl. And as we mentioned before, it kind of sits just outside that 2-week zone that I like to think about. But I like Louisiana just because of other things. And like I said, they're 6-6, so they kind of are like, okay, well, beggars can't be choosers. We're happy to be here. We've got a bowl game. Let's go wherever, kind of thing. As opposed to a team like Southern Miss, it's like, well, I was in competition. I'm 7-5. I'm a little bit better. We'll get to them, of course, but I had Louisiana in the New Orleans Bowl, which is one of those tie-ins. So we can go wherever direction you want with that, just to kind of hit on that. But that's where I had Louisiana in the New Orleans Bowl.
Yeah, so I'll take the New Orleans Bowl. I mean, I'm just going with the flow at this point. I feel like we got a good flow. So I'll continue with that. So for me, I like the thinking with Louisiana and how they travel, and I was tempted to either go Louisiana or Southern Miss from the Sun Belt side, but because in my eyes, I think the designated home team that the New Orleans Bowl is going to pick for that one is going to be Louisiana Tech, because they haven't played. They played in that one in 2020, but that was a pandemic. But the last non-pandemic year was 2015. So I have Louisiana Tech being sort of the designated home team for that one. And because of the gravity of the situation where the ESPN Bowls can pick Texas State anytime they want in the coming years. And I know we're working off to thinking that maybe there won't be any set bowl tie-ins after this year, but if there are going to be bowl tie-ins for conferences, this is really the New Orleans Bowl's only chance to pick Texas State. So I have Louisiana Tech playing Texas State in that one. San Marcos isn't exactly all that close to New Orleans, but it's an 8-hour drive. It's still manageable. It's their first time going to this bowl game in general. So I have Texas State playing Louisiana Tech. I think that's a pretty even matchup, from the looks of it. So, but I would not be surprised to see them go all Louisiana Tech, Louisiana with that one. I wouldn't be surprised. It's about money. It's really
and I think that's a popular pick this year too, because Louisiana Tech being a future member of the conference, and I like you putting them against Texas State as Texas State being an outgoing member of the conference versus a new one. I love the intrigue and the storyline behind that one. So that's I like that pick. And I'm glad you brought up Texas State, because that is something that I was thinking about right now. Any previous member of the Pac-10, Pac-12, whatever, they can be considered for the Pac-12 tie-ins this year, just because there's only one Pac-12 team that's bowl eligible, and that's Washington State, and there's only 2 to begin with. So all those previous schools are eligible to be Pac-12 teams, as well as whatever conference they're in now. Now, I think the Texas State fills one of those holes as a future member of the Pac-12. And because there's so much openness there, I have them in the Frisco Bowl, which is another one of those quote unquote upgrades. But the Frisco Bowl is also any group of 5. So that might be a case where they put Texas State up against a future Pac-12 team, just to say, just to kind of have that storyline as well. I know Frisco Bowl is kind of out of the realm. It's a quote unquote upgrade again, but I think Texas State, being who they are and where they are situated in the conference, not only are they going to be geographically more open to going somewhere out west, I think that tie-in of being, this is it. They're the last, they're on their way out. They're leaving the conference soon. Gives them a little bit more flexibility and a little bit more intrigue as far as where they could go. So I had them go to the Frisco Bowl specifically. I don't really have, if you've noticed by now, I don't really have opponents, just because I tried that. I tried to do that. I tried to do that 2 or 3 times. And I found that if you're going to do that, you have to start from the very top. You have to start from the playoffs and work your way down. and I still got 2, 3, 4 different ideas across the board. But Texas State, I like in the Frisco Bowl. I like getting that quote unquote upgrade. That said, I do like them up against Louisiana Tech in any capacity, even if it's the New Orleans Bowl or elsewhere.
Yeah, so I totally agree with you just not wanting to do like opponents, because I've been doing these projections all year, and it's gotten easier. The first time is always the most painful, but once you get the template down. But yeah, even still, like projecting the playoff even early in the season was like so difficult. So I totally understand that, which I think the Frisco Bowl is a good segue for my pick, because I had a Sun Belt team in the Frisco Bowl, but I had Southern Miss just because of the circumstances. Where I have the opponent being a Mountain West team. I have it actually being Fresno State, and you have a 12,000 seat venue, and you kind of like it kind of doesn't matter really like who goes there. It's just this game is filling up TV space. And the other added element is Texas State has played in the DFW area for the last 2 years for bowl games. So in my eyes, like I'm considering the Armed Forces Bowl, the First Responder Bowl, the Frisco Bowl, all to be the same bowl game for it. Or if you appeared in it one year, you shouldn't appear in it the next year unless it's an Armed Forces Bowl and you're inviting a service academy. So I got Southern Miss going to Frisco because it's while they're not exactly like an optimal designated home team for a 12,000 seat venue, and I think it was like an 8-hour drive from Hattiesburg to Frisco. I think that's good enough for the venue that they're playing in with 12,000 seats, and a team from California being the road team. So and I think it's a pretty even matchup. Like Southern Miss was rolling early in the year, and then Fresno State, they're 8-4, but you also don't know which Fresno State you're going to get at times. So I think it's a pretty even matchup. So I had Southern Miss going to the Frisco Bowl.
I like that because first of all, Southern Miss travels. You see that in baseball. You see that elsewhere. They're a proud fan base, and I know that this year is really tough for them. But I think I was on another podcast a few weeks ago, and I think I might have picked them as my most improved, most surprising team of the season. And I think that's clear for everybody. It's obvious why they went from 1-11 to 7-5. But the fact that it did happen is still worth that. It's a storyline with allure, but it's also it's worthy of that quote unquote upgrade. So I like that. I like having them in Frisco. And I like having Fresno with them too. Fresno was an interesting pick because of where they sit, and having to pull all the Mountain West teams across the country and figuring out where they go. But Southern Miss for me, still, like I said, I mentioned earlier, they get an upgrade. I feel like I don't have them in Frisco. I have them in the Independence Bowl, and that is more of an actual tie-in for the Sun Belt than any other non-tie-ins, because the Sun Belt is specifically listed as an alternate for that one in the event that there aren't enough spaces. I don't remember which conference is specifically lacking this year just because they're numbers, but it feels like there are a lot of empty spaces that are available. And I think that we're going to get a lot of quote-unquote upgrades. I think Southern Miss goes to the Independence Bowl. I don't know the last time they've been to that one, but it felt super close, just like the same reason you put them in Frisco. I think Louisiana, Texas, they're going to be decent places for the Golden Eagles fans to go travel.
Yeah, definitely. I think the Independence Bowl for me, I had the Big 12 filling that one because I'm working off the proposition that just Texas Tech is making the playoff out of the Big 12. So I have a Big 12 team filling that spot, which if a Sun Belt team played, that would change like my whole methodology, because in my eyes, like from the beginning of the season, I had the Conference USA champion sending their team, or the Conference USA champion going to Shreveport to play a Power 4 team, because Conference USA doesn't get many shots at Power 4 teams in bowl games. So, but in the event that BYU does make the playoff along with Texas Tech, then I definitely would agree with that one, since they use the, not by plan, they use the Louisiana Tech card last year, which is the easy go if you're a Sun Belt team. And Louisiana, of course, played 3 years ago as the first Sun Belt team in the current agreement. So Southern Miss makes a lot of sense with all the other moves to play in that bowl if two Big 12 teams make the playoff.
And that's just a great example of how like one domino affects all of the way down. You have to start from the top in order to do this, just because Who's going to get into the playoff? Is it going to be BYU or Alabama taking that last, little spot? Because I know that's kind of the fight right now is BYU, Miami, and Alabama. Who's getting in and who's not? And so that's not a conversation that like I know about it, but as a Sun Belt fan, I'm not necessarily realizing how much that over there could impact right here, just because tie-ins are still a thing. And maybe we're getting to the point of why they're deciding to get rid of them is let's just throw people together and pick good matchups. Maybe avoid conference rematches in any way, but just the ripple effect that it has from the top on down. Not even thinking about whether or not James Madison gets in. This is something that's apart from that. This is one of the at-larges. So, but I do. I get where you're coming from on the Big 12 filling that spot, just because the Big 12 has a ton of teams. Let me really count them real quick, because they've got Texas Tech, BYU, Utah, Arizona, TCU, Arizona State, Iowa State, Cincinnati, Kansas State. They've got as many teams bowling as the Sun Belt. 9 teams. That's a lot. That's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, it is. And it also gets complicated, too, by the whole Pac-12 legacy bowl tie-ins, too. So it's not easy to project the Big 12 in any way at all. Well, at this point, it's kind of surprising we haven't talked about Old Dominion yet. Not everyone's favorite 9-3 team.
Right.
So where do you have the Monarchs? I have a feeling we might agree on this one, but where do you have the Monarchs going?
So I'm going to go back to the 2-week rule. I said that Troy is the 3rd best team in the conference. Looking at record, just looking at FPI. The clear number 2 is Old Dominion. They're 9-3. They're number 55, I think, in the FPI. This is a great pick for any bowl that doesn't get a conference contender, just because of where they sit. They're pretty great. They're the belle of the ball at this point. I think they go to the Cure Bowl, and I know what that means because it also goes against everything I just said about, well, let's use the lesser teams to fill these bowl games. The Cure Bowl has historically fought for itself as a destination bowl in Orlando. We're going to get the best of the Sun Belt where we can. It used to compete with the New Orleans Bowl basically for that number 1 spot. And I think at one point it did take the number 1 spot from the New Orleans Bowl as far as picks go. But like you said, in this era of, I don't know if tie-ins are even going to be a thing, that goes back to that 2-week rule. Old Dominion's the best team that you can pick right now out of the Sun Belt and not have to worry about doing all that. So, and I think this might be a pretty popular pick. My personal, I kept hitting this one a lot doing some of my projections. I like Old Dominion playing Western Kentucky in the Cure Bowl. So I have an opponent for you in this one, and it's Western Kentucky, because it's another one that's a really good non-contender team to play Old Dominion in an early bowl game that's a destination that sets itself up. So early on, I kind of had Old Dominion going there anyway, but I like really anybody against Old Dominion in that slot, but Western Kentucky being another belle of the ball kind of situation. That's kind of where I had with that. It could be somebody like San Diego State. No, that's too far west. It could be South Florida, but I think South Florida being American is going to want something better. But, I got Old Dominion, Western Kentucky, Cure Bowl.
Yeah, so we're on the same page with that one for the most part, because I have Old Dominion as well, but I have them playing the MAC champion, which at this point is Western Michigan to me. Now, if Miami wins the MAC, then I think that would change the opponent, because I don't think Miami would play in the Cure Bowl. I think they'd be in the Boca Raton Bowl, because they played in Cure Bowl 2 years ago as MAC champion. But I got Old Dominion, Western Michigan for all the reasons that you said. This is a 9-win team. Old Dominion has never played in a bowl game in Florida, so there is that new experience as well. Western Michigan also has never played in a bowl game in Florida, so I think just all the dominoes just kind of fall there too. I mean, because the Cure Bowl, I think it's getting that reputation. People see the game being played at the Citrus Bowl Stadium or whatever it's called, Camping World Stadium.
Yep.
It just screams big time college football to a lot of casual fans who watch the Citrus Bowl every year. So it has that reputation, and why not put a team that is good enough, I would say, to be in the conference championship, but just in the wrong division against an actual conference champion?
And honestly, if you're looking at this, the Gasparilla Bowl is there, but it kind of looks like, with the exception of maybe the Gasparilla Bowl, it kind of seems like the best of the best bowl that happens before the college football playoff, which, if you'll also notice, is 2 weeks after conference championships. So I know that the people who run, which is an ESPN group, it's ESPN Bowl. So I know that they're trying to like position that as kind of premier content for college football fans before the playoffs start. So you're right. I'm with you. I like Old Dominion there, and I've said it twice now. I think this is the third time I'm going to say I'm not sure about anything, but I like that a lot. And I think that's where I end with saying that. But I think some of the stuff we're going to get into in a few minutes is going to change that, because let's see, we've gotten through pretty much all of the post college football playoff first round games, haven't we?
Yeah, I think so. I've really been keeping track of the dates, honestly. I'm keeping track of what teams we have mentioned.
Sure. Okay, so run through them real quick, just so that we can catch up to where we're at.
Okay, so we've gone through James Madison, Old Dominion, Troy, USM, your Louisiana pick, Texas State completely. So we have to go over Arkansas State, my Louisiana pick, Georgia Southern, and Coastal. Yeah. And Coastal. So, and I think those are all 6-6 teams that we have remaining. So, this is anyone's guess.
Absolutely. And I can start, because I think that my pick is going to be, I'm going to start by the Myrtle Beach Bowl, because it's both a team and a bowl game. It's a pretty popular pick, probably, maybe, to have Coastal there. I don't think Coastal goes there. I think we get Georgia Southern in the Myrtle Beach Bowl, just because they're the other East team. If you take out everybody else, they're the other East team left, and I think that Coastal is going to go to a bowl. So it's not necessarily a worry about them going anywhere. But I think Georgia Southern gets the chance to just drive up the road to Myrtle Beach and play in an early bowl game. Coastal will go elsewhere.
Ooh, okay. So for me, I think it just goes to, like, I guess, how we view the Myrtle Beach Bowl, because I view the Myrtle Beach Bowl as like kind of one that ESPN just kind of throws random teams in.
Right.
You know.
Yeah.
Yeah, like last year UTSA played as a road team. A couple years ago, the one that I went to in 2021, like, it was Old Dominion versus Tulsa, going from Oklahoma. So because of that reason, I picked Arkansas State actually to play in the Myrtle Beach Bowl, just because they've never played in that bowl game, and it's really like all the Texas bowls can be taken up in my eyes. And I think Arkansas State and Louisiana is an interchangeable pick for this one. Just because of the whole Texas Bowl aspect, because you can see both those teams playing in, whether it be Frisco or the First Responder Bowl, because I do have Army playing as a Group 5 team in the Armed Forces Bowl. You can see either of those teams play in like either of the DFW bowl games, but the one team that does not, I feel that they get sent to the Myrtle Beach Bowl just because.
And I like that pick too, because at this point, like, when you are looking at like I said, I talk about upgrades and the tiers that exist and the thought processes behind what bowls matter. The Salute to Veterans Bowl, the Myrtle Beach Bowl, and the 68 Ventures Bowl, they all have historically had tie-ins with the Sun Belt, and they all happen before the first playoff games happen. So I think that is an easy way for teams that end up 6-6, that teams that maybe didn't perform as well as they had hoped, they still get a chance to do this. They still get it done before Christmas, and they get to go home and have Christmas. So I like your Arkansas State pick there. But my thought process is that Arkansas State goes to the Salute to Veterans Bowl, which is a similar thought process. You get teams from every different place, and you throw them together. I can't remember the last time. I don't know if Arkansas State has played in the Camellia Bowl. I know they played in the Mobile Bowl a ton. But I think that this is one where it's like, you just kind of grab bag, and I've got Arkansas State in that one, in Montgomery, as opposed to Troy and Jacksonville State. So that's kind of it's the same thought processes, but it's applied different ways, and I like that.
Yeah. So for me, in a similar vein, I think that's the same reason I had Georgia Southern not being in the Myrtle Beach Bowl and Arkansas State not playing in the Salute to Veterans Bowl, because those were both of those teams' 2023 bowl games. So that recency is there for me. And so since we talked about Georgia Southern, I have, in the effort of even matchmaking, I have FIU playing Georgia Southern in Boca Raton, just because FIU is an easy home team. They've never played in the Boca Raton Bowl, so it works where ESPN can have their cake and eat it too, where they have a home team, they can sell tickets to this game, and they also have a very even matchup where Georgia Southern has, I think the only time they played in Florida Bowl is the Cure Bowl. I think back in like 2019 it was, or a while back.
Right.
So I have Georgia Southern playing in the Boca Raton Bowl, making that trip, because I think Georgia Southern fans travel pretty well, I would say. I know they have a pretty devoted fan base, so I would assume that they do travel very well. And yeah.
But I mean, you're also looking at it geographically too, because Georgia Southern fans are going to be close to Jacksonville. It's going to be a decent drive for them. I know the Cure Bowl would be easier just because it's a straight shot to Orlando, but I don't hate your thought process of having them in Boca Raton, just because it is reasonably close. South Alabama being in Mobile, Troy being really close to the state line, Georgia Southern, I mean, those are as close to Florida as you're going to get in this conference. And so to have them go to a Florida bowl game is not a bad pick, just because of that's pretty close. They might travel pretty well. And I'm sure, like Troy, they have a ton. Georgia Southern has a ton of fans in Florida. I'm sure that exists.
Yeah. So going on to, there's two teams left, I guess, that we haven't covered completely. One partially, one completely, not at all. So Coastal Carolina. Where do you have Coastal Carolina going this whole season?
I have them in Mobile just because it was that thought process of, and I like your thought process of it. They've been there in the last 2 years. Let's get some fresh blood. That's why I didn't have them going to Myrtle Beach. I have them going to Mobile. I agree that there are going to be some conversations between these bowls that are like, hey, well, we had them 2 years ago. Can we get somebody new? Or Myrtle Beach being like, we've got Coastal, but we'd like to do this. And so that was my thought process in putting Coastal in Mobile. It's not a bad pick. It's a 6-6 team. It would be kind of a grab bag situation, but it is also being the 68 Ventures Bowl. You've got a 3-way pick there from Conference USA, MAC, and the Sun Belt. The Sun Belt typically sends somebody to Mobile just because it's Mobile and it's South Alabama territory. So I've got Coastal to go in there just because I think, it's not Myrtle Beach. It's somewhere else.
Yeah, so originally, I think I might have made a projection in the past where I had Coastal Carolina playing in the 68 Ventures Bowl. I actually have the Sun Belt vacating that one for one of the new Conference USA teams that that I guess is going bowling for the first time. And that's just because in the past, like, we've seen Liberty play in that bowl game as an independent 2021, and then Rice played against Southern Miss when they were in the Sun Belt, but with a 5-7 record. So I mean, I'm inclined to, like, in my mind, I think the Sun Belt has given that bowl game like the last preference of teams. So with everything happening with ESPN, I have that one being vacated, which goes to say for Coastal, just because of the ambiguity surrounding this bowl, I've been playing in the Bahamas Bowl replacement bowl against Miami.
Bahamas Bowl, yeah.
Wherever that is.
Whatever it is, wherever it's played. No, I like that. And I like that pick too. That's I love those stats, that's good information behind it, because South Alabama did play in it a couple years ago, and it was basically the very thing that I've talked about across this conversation is some of these bowls are there for teams that didn't necessarily do as well as they had hoped. South Alabama 6-6. Let's just stay home and win a bowl game in our own stadium, and that's exactly what they did. So I get it. I think it's also worth pointing out, like I mentioned, that it's not owned by ESPN. It's one of the rare bowls that isn't. So I like where you're going with that being just a grab, like even more of a grab bag. And I like that you picked, was it Missouri State or Delaware? Because they're both 6-6, 7-5. They're both barely there, barely scraping by to get bowl eligible in their first year, which is rare. And again, it's a good story, but they're not necessarily the highest quality of team.
Yeah. So with all that being said, too, because I vividly remember I think we all do, the 2023, 60 Adventures Bowl, because of what happened after, but also what happened during the bowl.
Absolutely. Yeah. It was a blowout. Yeah.
Yeah, and like that, like looking back, that 2023 Eastern Michigan team, I think the MAC perceived them the same way that the Sun Belt perceives the 60 Adventures Bowl, where it's like this, like that Eastern Michigan team just was not good. Like they just didn't have any really good wins. They beat who they needed to beat, and all credit to them. Chris Creighton's one of my favorite coaches in college football just because of what he's done there. But that team was not fooling anyone, and it showed in the bowl game. So.
But I'm with you. It's an opportunity for teams to travel somewhere warm. You get to be in a Mardi Gras parade, and you get to play one more game. So that's what it is. That's what it's there for. That's what these games are for. That's why I love them. But no, I'm with you. It's ESPN has its favorites because it owns certain bowl games. So it's going to give more precedence, more preference to the bowl games that it owns. That's how this works, of course.
Yeah, it's kind of, I mean, it's kind of a shame, honestly, that these bowls get bullied. But I mean, what can you? At least these games still happen. At least they're still allowed to happen in this ecosystem.
Right. You could be the Bahamas Bowl and evaporate into just marks on a calendar, like where is it going to be played, where the hotel is going to be, what conferences are aligned, like what channel is it going to be on. There are so many logistical things that go into putting a bowl game that I'm blown away that at this point in the game, we have not heard what it's going to be, who's the sponsor, where it's going to be held, any of that. And that's a lot of information just to hold an event. So anyway, I like Coastal going there. That's a great pick. They're a crazy. There's a crazy brand, a crazy team with all the stuff that they do during the games. They got the teal field. They have that reputation. I love that pick for them.
Yeah. So and that's just because like I feel like the Myrtle Beach Bowl is a cop out. And like the Florida Bowls are taken too. So yeah. So should be interesting wherever that one is. I get a feeling just based on the time zone and based on that cryptic TV listing that Matt Stars Sports posted about a quote unquote college football bowl game, 9:00 Eastern. I think it's going to be in Frisco.
Right. And I'm glad you brought that up because it's like it's got to be a place that can handle a ton of travel just on a whim, like surprisingly. It's got to be a place that's already well established. And as you mentioned before, I'm glad you kind of gave that foreshadowing that the DFW area has so many bowl games going on already. They've got First Responder, they got Frisco, they got all of this happening in a month or so. So you've got teams coming in and out. It would just make sense just to add that to the ecosystem, which makes sense. As opposed to like back in the 2020, I think the Montgomery Bowl was the Montgomery Bowl by itself was not the Camellia Bowl, but it was just like, we need somewhere else. Let's just throw it there. You can't necessarily do that with Montgomery, but with Dallas, there's a lot more resources. So that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. So speaking of Dallas, I think this worked out as a good segue to I guess my last pick since you already slotted this team. I had Louisiana in the First Responder Bowl against Utah State. And I know this is more so a Sun Belt, we're of course talking about the Sun Belt, but Utah State was that awkward team that I just didn't know where else to place because they played in this bowl game 3 years ago. And that's just the nature of the game when you're a Mountain West school, especially Utah State, that's 4 hours away from Boise, but they played in that bowl 2 years ago. But back to Louisiana, I just think it fit, honestly. Louisiana just and that's interchangeable with them and Arkansas State. Like Louisiana could very well, in my eyes, play in the Myrtle Beach Bowl. And Arkansas State could play in the First Responder Bowl, but I just went with Louisiana, just because I feel like they're closer. I feel like they might match up better, better than Arkansas State with Utah State. I think there's still that perception that the casual fan has of Louisiana being, I wouldn't say well known, but a recognizable name in the Group of Five. And just that kind of casual viewership against the Mountain West team, because the Mountain West still has a strong perception among many casual fans. I think that just puts them in the First Responder Bowl, but that one I can go with either Arkansas State or Louisiana.
But I like it. It's a good thought process because you got Billy Napier that everybody's on their mind because he was just fired at Florida. A little bit of Sun Belt trivia there for you. There's only been 2 teams from the West ever to make the Sun Belt Conference Championship game, and it's Troy and Louisiana. Conference Championship game hasn't been around that long, But first 2-3 years it was Louisiana. Troy is 2 out of 4, and guess who was in the middle there? It was Louisiana last year. So they do have that recognition of being one of the, historic, like we're a Sun Belt school, we represent. And this lets me segue into the other thing that I like about that pick as the matchup, because Utah State was in the Sun Belt. I'm pretty sure they were the ones. It was like 3 years early on, maybe 2002 to like 2006 or something, and that was it. They just, for some reason, they were there, just like New Mexico State and Idaho. They were part of the Sun Belt too, and so there's a little bit of history with that, just going back to early Sun Belt days. And so I like that pick for that too, just because that happens to be there, and that, thinking about them being a former conference opponent warmed my heart, just because I love the weirdness of it.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, like I'm especially looking forward. I know next year you guys have Utah State in a paycheck game. Like, yeah,
Right.
so
I forgot about that. I did. Yeah, it's another one of those where it's like, oh yeah, we're gonna go do that. It's like UNLV. I think we have to go back to UNLV in a few years. It's like, oh yeah, they're on the schedule this year. Didn't really have one. Buffalo was the one this year, because it's like, oh yeah, we played you in a bowl game 7-8 years ago, and now it's like just finding other teams in the regular season to match up with. But no, yeah, anytime it's like, oh, I remember you, it's such a crazy feeling. So no, I also like to bring it back a little bit. Louisiana and a Texas bowl game. I think it's pretty clear that, like, there's a geographic element to this. You're not going to send, if you can, you're not going to send a Georgia team across to Texas if you can, when there are so many Florida bowls, and there's a Myrtle Beach bowl. You're not going to send a Texas team, or a Mountain West team for that matter. You're not going to send them to Florida if you can. You're going to have the Fenway Bowl is going to pick teams that are reasonably Eastern Seaboard. So there's an element of that to it, but you can't always count on that anymore, especially to bring it back together. If there's no more tie-ins, if it's just picking the best lineup, then maybe you do get UNLV versus Kennesaw State, because they're both conference champions and have really good records. It's not necessarily a thumb in the face. It's not like the TCU Boise State bowl game, BCS bowl game from, what was it, 2011, where the two teams were put together and they're like, we want to play power teams. It is more of a let's you've earned the right to play a really good team. Go do it. And for lesser teams that don't have as good of a record, it's like, you've earned it to this far. This is what you're kind of getting. And, fans get that. Because I know I'm around Arkansas State fans more now, and I know that they're not necessarily thrilled with the coaching staff, just because it's not as successful as it could have been. But that's where you're at. You do get to go to a bowl game because you're 6-6. So that's something to celebrate. That's something to have fun with, and I love that about bowl games.
yeah, absolutely. And I think just bringing up Arkansas State kind of reminds me, like, I just love the fact that there's so many bowl games that essentially, unless you're just like a really bad program, and even if you are a really bad program, like, and you go 6-6, you're almost guaranteed to make a bowl. Like, the days of the bowl drought are over. Like, the days of Arkansas State not going to bowl from like 1970 all the way to 2005 are essentially over. And like you said, like, if you go 6-6, like, you're going to be on national TV, like, playing in a game, and you get, if you're lucky enough, you get to make the trip as a fan. That's a reason to take a vacation. So it's just a happy time of the year just because of that.
It is. It is.
Yeah, like, I love it.
There's a little bittersweetness too, because those seniors are out there that are playing for the last time in their uniforms, and I hate that for them. And that's why you support the programs, because you've seen these guys play for anywhere between 1 to 4 years now because of the transfer portal. That's a whole other conversation. But you do get to. It is a celebration of the season and the work that you have put in, regardless of whether it was the best work you've ever seen or we won half the games on our schedule. That's okay. That's good. You're decent. You've earned it.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that's a good spot to put a bow on this discussion. Thomas, if you have anything final to add or anything to promote, the floor is yours.
Not really, but you know where to find us at Trojan Wall F5 on Twitter. We're on Facebook as well. TheTrojanWall.com is where we're at. We try to do some end of the year wrap up stuff, and I'm already starting to plan some of that. Post bowl game, of course. I'm going to be active on Sunday trying to find, put context to some of these matchups, and I love finding the storylines between them, like I just mentioned for the past 59 minutes or so. But that's where we're at. That's where to find us. Ben's there too. It's going to be a good time. I'm excited for Sunday. I'm excited for Friday, personally, but I get that not everybody can be. That's okay. That's not a dig. That's not a dig. I'm not trying to be dig at anybody, but
Yeah, I get it. It's just like when your team's in the conference championship, like for me, I thought I was indifferent after years of my team being independent for most of my life. But it's just great just to win a title of any type and have a chance to do that.
It is, and Troy's been blessed to be able to do that. But no, it is. I had to turn all of that off just to focus on some of these bowl game stuff. So I really did put my bias aside in it. But no, now that we're done with that, JMU can kick rocks.
I mean, yeah. I will say as a unbiased observer, I'm really pulling for JMU to win and just for chaos to ensue. Nothing against Troy. I have a lot of respect for the program. Can't wait to see you guys in 2034 and 2036. It's going to be a long 9 years. But yeah, I got to pull for JMU in that time. But that being said, I can't wait to see where you guys and everyone else ends up. But I also want to say too, the work that you guys do at Trojan Takes, at the Trojan Wall. Trojan Takes is someone else. At the Trojan Wall,
he does good work too. So we'll give him a shout out. That's fine. You can follow him. He's hilarious. I love him. So yeah,
he is. The work you guys do at the Trojan, I'm not even a Troy fan, but I just appreciate just the research and just in depth for any program. And that goes for any school that has a page like you guys just covering their school, just every nook and cranny. I really love the work that you guys do, from uniforms to the first FBS year. There's just so many stories I can just point to that you guys did that were just home runs, just amazing research. So I just want to give you guys the credit.
I appreciate that, and I do love finding other content creators like yourself and the other people that are out there that just love the game and love their program as much as we love ours. So I'm just happy to be part of that. Joe Flacco's burner, dude, representing Delaware. Hell yeah, I'm here for that.
Yeah. Oh yeah, exactly. But yeah, thank you again, Thomas, for
absolutely
this long discussion. I'm sure I've overstayed my welcome. Just give my wife or giving my baby to my wife and everything. But that being said, it was well worth it just talking all these bowl matches, having just an in-depth conversation just about every single moving piece that just comprises bowl season, even for just one conference. So thank you again, Thomas.
Of course, anytime.
Yeah, until next time, everyone. Thanks for tuning in, or listening or watching, and peace, love, and soul in the Burger Popper.